The ocean can be a magical place to paddle, but it can also become quite dangerous if the conditions change.
So today I just want to take a little bit of time to talk about safety on the water when it comes to windy conditions. No matter who you are or how much experience you have paddling on the water, being on the water at the wrong time with the wrong kind of conditions can honestly cost you your life. For example, a few months back, I actually saw an article written where these two youth boys went out for a paddle on the open ocean. Now, unfortunately, on this day, there were some strong offshore winds, so because of that, these two boys actually got pushed out into the open sea. When people finally noticed the two boys were missing, they actually had to send the Coast Guard out to go looking for them on the open ocean. Now, thankfully, in this situation, they were able to find these two boys and get them back to safety, but it is an unfortunate reminder about how dangerous the wind can be. So today, I simply want to share with you a few things that I do to help ensure my safety on the water, as well as give you a few tips at the end of this video to help you paddle through strong winds in case you find yourself in a bad situation. So the first thing that I highly recommend that you do before every single paddle session is check the weather reports. Now, there are two apps that I personally use when it comes to checking the wind conditions on the water to see how they're going to be for the day. The first one is called Windy, and it is a great app to simply pull up your location to see what direction the winds are coming from and how strong they're going to be as well. Another app that I like to use is called the Windy.app. On this application, I like to use it because I can not only check the wind conditions and what direction they're coming from once again and how strong, but I also can check things like the tidal change for the day to see how much current there's going to be in certain locations, as well as I can check things like swell height and the strength of that swell, so it gives me a better idea of what kind of conditions I'm getting myself into that day. Now, as we know, weather reports are not always the most accurate. So the next best step that you can do is actually go to the location you're going to paddle at, and before you even get into the water, do a risk assessment of that location. Check to make sure the wind is actually blowing the direction that the forecast said it would be, as well as make sure it's not blowing any stronger than the forecasted as well. The most dangerous direction of winds, though, is offshore winds. This is when the wind is blowing from the shore into the open ocean, and when the wind is coming from this direction, you never want to go out for a paddle. The reason for this is because even if the winds are blowing lightly when you first go out into the water, they could easily pick up and become too strong for you to be paddled back into shore, which will cause you to get blown out into the open ocean like those two youth boys that we talked about earlier. This will obviously put you in a very bad situation, and if you can't make it back to shore, it can cost you your life. Now, if the wind is blowing in a good direction, for example, like an onshore breeze, you may be wondering how strong a wind should you consider not paddling in. Now, obviously, this does depend on your skill level on the water. But for example, for beginner paddlers, I definitely recommend not paddling in winds over 8 knots. This is simply for beginner safety because I'm not fully experienced enough to put enough effort, enough power into the paddle stroke to paddle through stronger winds. For intermediate paddlers, I recommend not paddling in winds over 10 knots. And if you're someone who has more experience or you are a professional paddleboarder, obviously you can handle conditions even up to 15 knots or maybe a little bit more. So it definitely depends on your personal experience level and how comfortable you are paddling through rougher conditions. But at the end of the day, know what you're comfortable with, know your experience level, and if you're questioning whether you should go out or not, don't go out in the water at all. All right, let's end things off talking about 3 techniques that you can use on your paddleboard if you find yourself in a bad situation with the wind. If you're finding it difficult to paddle into the wind to get back to the beach or your starting location, the first step to do is actually lower your stance on your paddleboard. One of the ways you can do this is actually lowering your hands on your paddle. We'll take your top hand and lower a little bit down on the paddle shaft, doing a chokehold, as well as moving your bottom hand a little bit further down, closer towards the paddle blade. By standing and paddling this more aggressive stance, you'll be able to get more power into your paddle stroke, as well as help reduce the amount of drag your body is causing in the wind. Now, if this technique is not working for you and you're still finding it very difficult to paddle upwind, the next thing to do is to get even lower. So now you want to sit down on your knees on your paddleboard, and once again, you want to move your hands further down your paddle shaft. So now your bottom hand is actually to be right above the paddle blade, and your top hand is to be in the middle of your paddle shaft. This will once again allow you to get more power into your paddle stroke, allowing you to have more power paddling upwind. As well as because you're lower on your paddleboard, once again, you're creating less drag in the wind with your body. But if conditions are getting crazy in the water and you're still getting pushed out to sea, the next thing you want to do is lay all the way down your paddleboard. In this position, you're simply going to lay your paddle down on your paddleboard and then lay on top of it. Then from here, you're going to do a prone paddle back into shore. In this position, you're having the least amount of wind resistance as you're laying flat on top of your paddleboard, but it still provides you with a good position to swim back into shore as well in that prone position. So I hope those few tips help you guys out in terms of your safety on the water. And as I mentioned earlier, if you go to the beach or you go to the lake and you're unsure if you should go out or not, don't go, because you don't want to put yourself in a bad situation that can cost you your life. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have other tips or pieces of advice for paddling in the wind, be sure to leave those down in the comments down below. I'll catch you guys in the next video.